So we did it. The zero email inbox process is complete. Well, it's almost complete. There's one more thing to do. I'd mentioned this in the last video, and that's what I'm here to show you in this last part 3 of the zero email inbox process. I'd mentioned that as I'm going through the emails, I'm going to be forwarding things to Evernote, anything that I'm not going to follow up on immediately because it just requires more than I'm willing to do while I'm just trying to stay focused on cleaning up the emails, more than I can do right now. Something that needs to be scheduled for later because I need more time. Those things got forwarded to Evernote. So Evernote has a tagging system, which is what I use and it's part of how I know whether or not something has been addressed since the time it was originally forwarded to Evernote. In other words, I need to make sure now that I've forwarded that stuff that I have a system in place for when and how I'm going to get that stuff done. So let's go over to Evernote for a minute, and it's all based on the tags. And because I know how my system works, I set it up. Anything that doesn't have a tag that's in this action pending notebook means it needs to be tagged, and that's the last piece of the process. This theoretically is all the stuff I forwarded from emails that I haven't tagged yet, and notice it's all from today at various times. So if I just click to sort and then resort the tags, then I'll get all the stuff that isn't tagged yet, of course, floating right up to the top. And then what I want to do is I'm going to double click these. They'll come up on my other screen. You don't need to see the details, but this is going to be something I'm going to tag, and you'll see the tags appear once I finish. So I just tagged that one, follow up. And I'm going to tag it. I have a tag called nerd and then me in parentheses. And what that does is it lets me know that that's follow-up for me. It doesn't necessarily pertain specifically to a client. It's just something I need to do, right? So I close that, and notice it kind of jumped me down on the list here. I'm not sure where it took me. I guess it should have taken me to where that now falls in alphabetically based on the follow-up tag. And then after that, it's sorted further within that. So here's the follow-up nerd me. So it's in here somewhere. Not important. I know it's tagged. I know how to find it when I'm ready to follow up on it. Same thing here. This is something that Intuit asked me to do. I need to follow up on filling out my bio for their accountant's blog. So this is going to be nerd follow-up, right? Just real quick, adding those 2 tags. Scrolling back up to the top. This is something I have to follow up on. This has to do with a client, so it's going to get a tag based on the client name. And it's going to get tagged follow-up, and it's going to stay in the action pending notebook because that's the point. If there's action pending, it means it hasn't been done yet, so it stays in there. Here is another order that I received. So this is going to be nerd follow-up. And then the other thing I do with this is I have a priority tag, number 1 now. And you can see in the bottom section, we're looking at actually the details of that note here. I have it popped out on my other screen, as I mentioned. So now that lets me know that this is something that needs to be followed up on with a higher priority. And it's the sort of thing that I need in our project management system for our one-on-one sessions right away. Because the reason I do this is so that when the session comes, if I'm not sure, if I don't remember whether or not the person paid, that serves as my confirmation that they paid, the fact that I know I put that there. Here's a book somebody suggested to me. So that's going to get tagged read later, and that's about it. And that one doesn't need to stay in action pending. So I have a notebook called Cabinet General. I move it there. It comes out of the action pending queue because it's just read later. It's not something I necessarily need to follow up on specifically. This is a note based on a fundraiser for a nonprofit that I am involved with. So that's going to get tagged based on that nonprofit's initials, and it's going to get tagged follow-up. And I leave that one in there. And we're almost done. September news and events from something that I wanted to follow up on. This is also personal, so this is going to be follow-up nerd, and I might even add the personal tag to it just as a reminder that this is personal in nature. And that's that. Scrolling back to the top, almost finished. My Southwest Rapid Rewards. And actually, it's funny because the note itself has nothing to do with that. The reason I followed it, I made a note to myself. It's just my reminder that I want to book some personal travel, actually, to go see my family in New York. So this, again, is going to be follow-up nerd. And almost done. Just a couple more. This has to do with that same nonprofit. Close that down, all the way back up. This is for my travel for QuickBooks Connect. So this one actually gets moved to the QuickBooks Connect notebook, and it gets tagged travel because it has the information I need about my flight and whatnot. And I change the notebook. I can change that right here to QuickBooks Connect 2015. Boom, that takes care of that one. I think we're almost done, and there's one other thing I want to show you that I do that you can do. So this is somebody emailing me saying they want to pick my brain. Follow up nerd. Move that down. So now I know everything's been tagged. If I sort it both ways, there's not a single thing in my action pending notebook, and this is just a shortcut I put on the top to that notebook. There's nothing here that hasn't been tagged. So now I know everything's been sort of situated where it needs to be. Notice I've got my one follow-up now. These are the customer orders that I need to make sure I drop into the project management solution that I use for tracking all my one-on-one sessions, and that has to happen tonight before I go to sleep, basically, which is why they get that priority. Now, the other thing I can do is if I switch the view here to the Snippet View, this is one of the other things I love about Evernote. Any note that's been marked with a reminder will show up in this list. This list only appears when you're in the Snippet View. So previously we were in the list view, now we're in the Snippet View. But this is another way, if I want to make sure that something gets my attention, I mark it with a reminder. So all these things have been marked with reminders. In fact, these are things that I had marked or updated at some point to the 11th, so now I want to change them. And I'm just going to quickly go here. Since I didn't get it done before the 11th, we're going to change date, and we're going to go to tomorrow. And I'm going to do that with everything that isn't already done. And that's basically it. So this is how I manage my to-dos and tasks in Evernote. And, you know, there's a lot of applications out there that are made just to do to-do lists. Evernote is obviously sort of much broader than that. But because of these very features that I've shown you here, just the tagging capability, the fact that you can move things around easily between notebooks, and the ability to set these reminders are the reasons that I really kind of still love Evernote above everything else, except when you have to collaborate. That's where Evernote starts to fail. Now then we get into something like Wunderlist, which is wonderful for collaborating with people on to-do lists. But when you're just trying to manage your own to-dos, then this is what I use. So I do both. I use this I might even have to-do items in here that remind me about something I have to follow up on that's also in a collaborative to-do list, because ultimately this is where I live. This is kind of my home base for this sort of stuff. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. As always, if you have questions, post them. Reach out to me. There's any number of ways to reach me. Comment on the blog post. If you're on YouTube, comment on the YouTube video. Otherwise, join our ABO group if you don't already belong on Facebook, or just send me a tweet to @NerdEnterprises. @School of Books is more of an admin Twitter account. So tweet me at @NerdEnterprises, and that's a great way to get my attention and ask me questions. I love spending time on Twitter. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.